So we're on to the lungs now. So we're looking at each organ, each of these topics here on the left-hand side of the screen. And we're talking about how stress affects each one of them. We're talking about the sympathetic activation versus the parasympathetic activation. And then we're talking about the psychophysiological illness. And then we're going to illustrate a particular stress concept with the different organs. So this one is on the lungs. And so why don't you guess? When you're under stress, what happens to your lungs? Do they open up or do they constrict? Well, you have to know that this sympathetic nervous system is designed to get you out of danger. That's what the stress response is for, is to get you out of danger. So what they do is they open up, so they bring you more oxygen so that you can fight or flee. So sympathetic would be opens the lungs, and then the parasympathetic would be more constricts the lungs. So this one would be opens, dilates the bronchioles, or this one is constricts. Now, the psychophysiological illness that's associated with the lungs, a lot of you probably know bronchitis, um, asthma. Now, some of you say, what asthma? Well, I thought that asthma, it means that you can't breathe. Well, what happens, and they have a good illustration in your textbook, what happens is that the lungs, when they are opened up and you're under stress, they behave differently. So, for example, the stress response is designed to have you move, and that's why exercise is such a great activity when you're stressed, because that's what your stress response is for. Also, another thing is that your this stress response works as a chain. And so if you can calm one link in this chain, so it's called a chain ganglia, and it's mitigated by the thoracolumbar portion near the spinal cord. That's the Psych 2 principle though, but just know that it works as a chain. So it happens all at once. It's fast. It's like turning a light switch on, just boom, everything happens at once. The heart starts beating, the lungs open up, and then all the rest of the things that go on. Then the parasympathetic, it doesn't work in the same way. It's more like a dimmer switch, and each organ gets affected differently, and it has its own time link. So if you can kind of control these lungs, that's why they say breathing when you're stressed is so important. If you can kind of take control of the lungs, take control of one aspect of the stress response, then that seems to affect the other aspects. So think of it as a chain, and if you can control one of the links in the chain, you can stabilize the entire chain. So with asthma, what happens is your lungs are wide open, so they allow a lot of allergens to come down and irritate the lungs, and it kind of creates a mucus buildup, and it changes the way the lungs are reacting. So people who are under stress, they cannot breathe. And this stress could be danger stress, or it could just be like a cognitive stress that you're worrying about something that's going to happen. Now, another interesting physiological illness, so we have asthma and we have bronchitis, is lung cancer. And some of you are like, oh no, Amy, we don't agree with you. Lung cancer is because of smoking. We know that. Well, first of all, we know that we tend to smoke more when we're under stress. But besides that, it seems what we're going to find is this whole stress response inhibits our immune system. And our immune system is the system of glands and organs that fights off illness. And so people who are under more stress are more likely to get pretty much all forms of cancer. But I remember seeing this statistic, and the statistic said that married men can smoke twice as many cigarettes as single men and get to sustain the same amount of damage. So why would being married for men seem to mitigate the effects of the smoking? So we don't know for sure, but we have some hypothesis. And you know how what I'm telling you is that I want to demonstrate a principle on each one for each one of these particular organs or behaviors, I want to demonstrate a stress principle. So I'm going to tell you this fun story that I always love to tell. It's the story of the rabbits. And a lot of times I love to tell stories, and you might see these stories again on the test. So this is about the rabbits. And so I want you to picture this because you have to kind of mentally picture it. So I want you to picture 5 groups of rabbits. And each group of rabbits is being taken care of by a different lab assistant. So we got 5 groups of rabbits. We got 5 lab assistants. Now, they're testing the effects of this drug on the rabbits. And I know it's really sad, but they're trying to see, does this drug kill the rabbits? Like, they're actually testing, like, is it safe? Is it not safe? They were, okay, so it doesn't matter. We'll just say it's a horrible study, but I want to tell you what happened. So in the first experiment, all of the rabbits died within 2 weeks, except for the majority of the rabbits in one group of rabbits that was cared for by one single lab assistant. So the person that's overseeing this whole study, he's upset at this lab assistant and says, you know what, you didn't follow protocol. You know what happened? Everybody else's, they died. We could report the results. We would be done. But yours didn't. You confounded the whole study. And he said, nope, here's my log, here's my journals, everything, here's the empty vials. I did everything according to protocol, absolutely. So the overseer of this research study said, well, you know what, we're going to have to try it again to find out what the problem is, what's going on here. So this time they're watching him very closely. You know, they put him in a different room. They want to make sure it's nothing like that. And what they see is they see something kind of interesting, which I don't know what to think about this. I'll just tell it to you and you can decide what you want to think about this. So this particular lab, all the other lab assistants, they kind of treated like the rabbits as just a lab animal. Like they didn't have much interaction with them. They would just clean their cages and give them the drug and be on their way, feed them. And then, but this guy, he would play with all the rabbits. He would cuddle them and pet them and talk to them and spend all kinds of time touching them. And then he would give them the poison. So I don't know. Was he trying to make the last days happy days? Was he a psychopath and getting some I don't know. Okay. So anyway, again, the same thing happens. And they had watched him in a big 2-way mirror and they saw what he did and they were kind of like, why is he doing that? But his rabbits lived again and they said, wow. So this time they repeated the experiment by tactilely stimulating the rabbits 10 times before giving them the drug. So when they repeated the study this way, they found, sure enough, that touching the rabbits, tactilely stimulating the rabbits, seemed to create a certain type of health in them. Did you guys know that if the mother, premature baby, if a mother gives birth to a premature baby and the baby has to be in the incubator, if the mother comes in and strokes the baby, massages the baby 5 times a day, the baby will gain an average of 30% more weight. Another interesting study is they did lab rats. They said, why do Japanese lab rats live so much longer than American lab rats when they're the same exact species, they're eating the same exact food, they're living under the same conditions? And what they found was it was the way that Japanese clean the cage. The way that Japanese clean the cage is they have a special lab coat and it has this cleaning pocket in it where they pick, when they need to clean the rat's cage, they pick the rat up and they put the rat in the lab coat pocket. And they hold it close to their body and they clean it. Whereas Americans, what they do is they pick all the rats up and just throw them in a cardboard box, put them in a cardboard box, and clean the cage. So we're going to find out that what seems to cause us stress is change. And even positive changes can cause stress. So whenever we need to change, this seems to be a bit stressful. But again, we're back to this whole thing with finding the balance. If we don't have enough change, then we get bored. But if we have too much change that we feel that we have no control over or it's too unexpected, then that causes us really uncomfortable feelings. So, in any case, what does this come down to with lung cancer and married men, single men? Is a topic that the construct that I want to teach right now that's associated with stress is I want to talk about the power of social support. It has been shown over and over and over again that people who have social support, they they are able to, the social support seems to buffer the stress. So having a person that you can truly rely on makes you much more healthy. Much more healthy. Like, and what another thing that they talk about that seems to boost the immune system is this chemical called oxytocin. So when you touch someone, you release this chemical called oxytocin. And if you Google it, you can see it's the cuddle hormone. And in fact, I'm going to show you a video that will talk about this in a bit. But having someone that you can rely on, feeling connected to people, is a really great stress buffer. So if we go back to our past module where we talked about type A's might get so caught up in their competition, in their drive to move forward and accomplish, that they push away relationships. But unfortunately, what we need to do is we need to move forward with our visions of ourselves, but we also have to take time to take pride in ourselves, and we have to make time to connect with others. It's a very important thing. So, the concept that I'm trying to teach here is the power of social support, that we need touch, we need closeness. So, remember how I said, that married men can smoke twice as many cigarettes as single men? They didn't find that same effect with women. And the reason, again, we are not 100% sure about why this is. We're still trying to learn about it. But women in general seem to be more socially connected in life. They seem to tend to have more friends. They tend to be able to share their feelings with one another a little bit more. They care for children. Whereas men seem to have more disconnect. I mean, even in this day and age, you don't, if men are not touched by women, or like if they're not in a gay relationship, if they are heterosexual, there's not as much touching of men as women. So we'll stop there and we're going to move on to the pupil next.